Hey, everybody, welcome to Matt Men, your source for all things professional wrestling. I'm Andrew Zahn. We're back with another awesome interview. This is part of our interview series that we've been doing over the last couple months here, and we're joined with a great guest. But before we bring him in, I want to introduce my co-host, as always, Rich Stambolian. What's going on, Rich?
What's up, man? What's up, everybody? How you doing? How you doing, Andrew?
I'm freezing.
Yeah, it's a little windy today.
Very windy, very cold here in the Northeast, but I'm very, very excited to have our guest on it. And, you know, sometimes things just fall into place. I saw a tweet, I retweeted it, and all of a sudden, here we go. Charlie Haas on the show. What's going on, Charlie?
Hey, how are you guys doing, man? I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and thanks for reaching out. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. You know, one of my favorites of all time, you and Shelton, top 10 in the tag team rankings for many people. But before we go into it, how you feeling? Because you took a bad bump a couple of weeks ago.
No, I'm feeling fine. I want to thank Impact. They're very professional. First Josh Alexander for being a great pro in the ring. And, man, I'm just happy that I was able to finish that match. And he's the ultimate pro, and he is the pinnacle. And Impact itself, the personnel from Scott D'Amore to Tommy Dreamer to D'Lo Brown, Gail Kim, all the way down, just the utmost respect. And no, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling fine. And man, I'm back on track. So thanks for asking.
Josh is a friend of the show. He's done the show in the past. So, I mean, there's so much I want to talk to you about. Obviously, your journey back into professional wrestling, because for a lot of people, you came out of nowhere back into wrestling. You took off for a while. What was that process like as far as, you know, deciding that you want to get back into the ring and the actual process of prepping again?
It's no secret. I was went through the divorce with Jackie, and that was really tough. And I needed time away, just not for myself, but for my kids and my family. Healing from that. And we get along great. We co-parent very well. We got 4 beautiful kids. I can't thank her enough for being a great mom. And so I wanted to get back into wrestling. I really I was pretty much done, and I got inducted into Texas Home Pro Hall of Fame. And when I was there was James Beard there, and he's like, hey, you're looking great shape. Why don't you come back out and try it? And I'm like, man, I'm pretty much done. But my kids are there, and they never really saw me, or they actually never saw me wrestle on TV before. The boys never did, at least, and they're 11 and 9 now. So they're like, come on, Dad, come on. So I'm like, all right, let me try this. So we did for a while, and I was at the time I was still trying to get back, like lifting, getting my size back on. I was just coaching amateur, and I was wrestling in the amateur room the whole time with high school, college students. So I mean, my workout was really just trying to get as lean as possible, but as flexible to where I can wrestle again amateur instead of wrestling pro. And then, when I started doing the pro, man, I had to put all this weight and start lifting and and started changing my workouts and eating more. And it's just, it's been, I tell you what, I mean, there's so many good athletes today, these kids, these young adults, these men that are wrestling. It's a great time to be a wrestler. I think I was really happy about it when the internet TV took off, and you're seeing all these different. It's almost like watching the old territories back in the day. You're seeing like MLW or AAA or Ring of Honor. I go to Pluto, I type in Fight TV, and you get all these amateur, PCW Ultra. You get all these different promotions, and everyone's been able to showcase their talent. So it's a really, I was watching everybody. I'm trying to catch up. My boys are educating me on everybody. AEW, is the new thing. And it's just, and then so James Beard and talked me into coming out to SWE, and that's took off for a while. And then, I realized, well, I'm a really good heel, and something I need to, the kids are having fun. So I'm like, well, let's just do it, man. Let's get back into it. So
you got the itch back, basically.
Yeah, I did.
Seeing this new landscape of wrestling. Like, what did that feel like? It was
like,
feel like,
I tell you,
yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
No, I felt like a kid again. I mean, I'm like watching, like I said, it's not only a great time to be a pro wrestler, but it's a great time to be a fan. I mean, I think for so long you saw WWE and they were like the AT&T or of cell phones, but for wrestling, they monopolized everything. They bought everything, they own everything. And I think finally, unfortunate the pandemic hit, but it also taught people to cut the cords and and to save money. And so this internet TV blew up, I think, around the same time, and you get Pluto and Plex, and everyone's looking for content. And man, all these different, like I said, you got MLW, there's so many different promotions with these excellent wrestlers. Now they can showcase their talent. I tell a lot of the wrestlers that are up and coming, because my deal is I want to pay it forward. And I could teach them better. If they want to learn as a heel, and that's the way it used to be back in the day. The heels would always lead, and they didn't have wrestling schools. You would learn your first wrestling lesson would be your first match in the ring. And they'd just say, "Don't say a word, just listen and be quiet." And that would go on for about a year. And you would bounce from territory to territory for about 10 years till you got called up to Worldwide Wrestling Federation or the NWA or AWA or World Class Championship Wrestling. So I tell everybody, I go to these different promotions. Each promotion's different, each style's different. Learn to master your craft, and hopefully, when you're ready, AEW will pick you up, or WWE, and that's where the money is. So, but people can still make a living wrestling with these other promotions, especially with social media. You self-market yourself. Look at Matt Cardona. He's the pinnacle when it comes to self-marketing, social media and all that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And something that a lot of people may not know is that you started off heavy in independent wrestling, Jersey All Pro Wrestling, you and your brother tag teams over there. You started off we saw you on WWE TV, early to mid 2000s, but you were wrestling from 96 on.
Yeah. So right after we graduated, Russ and I started with Jersey All Pro and CZW. We actually held the tag titles for CZW and Jersey All Pro at the same time, and that's when ECW was just breaking out, and they were just exploding. We'd come home from the bars at 1:00 in the morning, and you watch ECW, up in the Northeast, from Seton Hall. I'm a Seton Hall guy, so I'm up there in the Northeast, and ECW is going nuts. People are loving it. It's going on wild at the bars. People are going crazy. So we got into the pro wrestling. Jersey, I was trained by Iron Mike Sharp. Russ and I were trained by Iron Mike Sharp, Canada's greatest athlete. He was a WWF guy, so we had credibility there. And then we were trying to get an ECW, and and the Monday Night Wars are going on. And we spent about a good 4.5-5 years on the Indies till WWF picked us up. It was WWF at the time, not WWE, but we would wrestle for CZW and JAP, and a lot of the guys that were starting out there were the ones that started Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor didn't start yet. So, Jersey All Pro and CZW were they were probably the prelude to going into Ring of Honor for a lot of the guys.
You brought up training, right? And I think this is interesting because you train amateur wrestlers and you work with a lot of younger talent in professional wrestling.
Right.
You went through early WWE developmental, right? Correct. Memphis. You were in Memphis for a while. How do you think Heartland? Yeah, Heartland Wrestling.
Yeah, OVW. Yeah.
How do you think that's changed? And developmental now is a very different beast. It is really refined. It's more like any other professional sports training facilities. The big difference for you, what was WWE developmental like when you went into it compared to today, obviously?
Yeah. So we signed with WWF. We spent 5.5 years on the and I got to give credit to Jim Kettner for ECWA. He polished us up before, when we found out WWF was looking at us, and Kevin Kelly was working with them, and Kevin Kelly really helped us out. And Jim Kettner, and they got us to our footwork, the tagging, the polishing up. They taught us the psychology. We knew all the moves. We knew we were able to come together as a tag team on the indies with Jim Kettner polishing up. So we got sent, our second developmental or our second tryout. We got signed right away to the WWF developmental. We got sent to Memphis, and what was great about that, and I have to say, is that we were able to work live TV there, and it was the Power Pros wrestling show that was live, that which Jerry Lawler ran, and it was and it was the same time that he ran all those years for USWA, and we were whatever you said or whatever you did, it was live there. You had to. That's where we learned about TV. That's where we learned about, okay, you have so much minute, your TV time. There was no edit. It was, what you said is what you heard. If you messed up, man, it went live. And then, so what we would do is they would base our TV there, and then all our spot shows, or house shows, they would call it, were all based it was syndicated TV. So as far as the antenna would go, that's where we would do our TV show. And then that night we had a spot show, because it would go off like at 10 in the morning, 10 to 11. And then, we were out, we're doing a house show that night, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you're back Thursday, Friday, you get, just like your weekend. And then you're back doing the spot show again on Saturday. So we had a lot of, it was a lot of fun. That right there. And you're working with a lot of people that were pros for a long time, that never, that were really big and, popular in the USWA territory. So it was, but never made it to WWF. So we were working under, like superstar Bill Dundee, or, Jamie Dundee, and quite a few, Brian Christopher, and there was a lot of other people that were down the USWA. So they helped us, and they helped, they would teach us. And we'd go out and do the spot shows, and we were in there. We had some great talent. That tag team actually in Memphis, we had Joey Matthews, Christian York, a great indie team, which was Mercury later on, Joey Mercury. And then you had the Island Boys. You had our first match on Power Pro was American Dragon, Brian Danielson versus in Spanky versus Russ and Charlie. Then you had who else? The Dups. The Dups were there. They were and so did you. You also had the Mean Street Posse. So we went from there to we went to once they shut that down, we went to HWA. Heartland Wrestling Association, or Les Thatcher. There was kind of hectic and crazy because of all of a sudden ECW and WCW got bought. So all of a sudden, people that weren't put immediately on TV were sent to either OVW or HWA. So here we are getting ready, to be called up, because Russ and I were they were going to start Team Angle with Russ, Charlie, and Kurt and I. Or I'm sorry, Russ, Shelton, Kurt, and I. And,
so it was supposed to be three of you in there. Okay,
it was four of us.
Four of us. With Angle, yeah.
Yeah. So, and so there was a show in Memphis where Kurt showed up, and we defeated Benoit, Joey Matthews, and Christian York. And he raised our hands. He had the gold medal on, and that was the announcement of Team Angle right there. And so he was like, "Hey, we're going to do Team Angle. It's going to be us four, and and Shelton's going to be the fourth person." And so it was eventually for us four. And they had plans for Brock to do what they were going to do with him. So then we they shut Memphis down. We get sent to Cincinnati, and then all of a sudden everyone gets bought. So they kind of put the Team Angle on hold for a second, because they were, all of a sudden, you get people showing up from, ECW and WCW down in HWA. Jim Cornette had his pick on who he was going to go, because OVW is more, they had more experience as the developmental territory, and HWA was really new. So he was, he at the time he had Batista, Orton, Cena, the Minnesota Stretching Crew, Brock and Shelton, Doug Basham, Damage, it was Danny Basham. The list goes on. Rob Conway. So HWA was newer, so we had more of the WCW, ECW. So all of a sudden, like, all the WWF developmental talent got pushed to the back, and they were going through talent, seeing who they're going to keep and who they're going to get rid of, and so we were making the cuts. We're making the cuts, and then Russ unfortunately passes away, and it just so it really I got to thank WWF, because it could have got rid of me, because Team Angle worked out great for us three. It was going to be us four, but they could have scrapped the whole thing after Russ's death, and they didn't. So I'm grateful for that. But then once they shut that down, I moved on to OVW. Once they shut HWA down, went on to OVW, and then they decided to go back with Team Angle, and that's when they put Shelton and I together. But to answer your question, I know it's long-winded, but my answer was, but yeah, the way developmental is now, I mean, it's incredible. I think the people with NXT, by the time they get called up to the roster, I mean, NXT is like it's another organization by itself. I know it's under WWF's umbrella, but it is still, fans love it. It has its own niche. It has its own cult following, and when those wrestlers get called up to WWF's roster, I mean, they're already over. They know it's working. I mean, the crowd is with them, and that's what I like about it. It's different from when with us, they didn't know who we were at all. So, we're doing dark matches, but when they bring you on TV, they don't know anything about you. At least NXT gives them a chance to showcase, and the internet and the fans are so smart. They do their due diligence, and they research everybody, and they know who it is, who's coming up, and what their finishing move is, and who's with who, and who, what faction's which. And so I don't know. It's fun to be a fan and a wrestler at this time.
Charlie, you clearly have an encyclopedia-like knowledge of not only your own circumstances, but the circumstances surrounding your breaking into the business. Now, I got to ask, did you grow up a fan, or did that come later on?
Definitely.
Yeah.
No. I was a fan. I'm a mark. I was a mark. So, I grew up. My first match I saw on TV was Jimmy Fly Super Snuka turning down Captain Lou Albano and going to the ring, and he was getting ready to wrestle for the junior world title against Ray Crippler Stevens, and they jumped Jimmy, and they just beat him with his his beads and all that he always would put around his forehead, and then they pile drove him twice on the cement, and I was hooked after that. So I was hooked. So I grew up a fan, and then Cable was just in the pre-listen stage. I mean, it was just coming out, and all of a sudden, man, here comes world-class championship wrestling, and I'm watching WCW, NWA. And then in the morning, Georgia Championship Wrestling, the Carolinas, and then, you would get Mid-South Wrestling. I'd get that on Saturday as well. And then at midnight, it was World-Class Championship Wrestling from the Sportatorium. So I was able to watch like 4 or 5 different territories where I was living. So I was hooked, man. I was hooked.
I always find that interesting, what catches your eye. Obviously, you became a wrestling fan, and then you went into amateur wrestling. How did you get into amateur wrestling? Because you had a tremendous career as an amateur wrestler. You went to Seton Hall, your brother as well, obviously. How did you get into that? Because I have a bunch of buddies right now. My son is 4, so he's getting ready to go into all these sports and stuff. But, I mean, amateur wrestling is one of the best things you could put your kids in, because it teaches you so much. And it actually works out almost every muscle in your body. How did you go into this?
Well, the first thing about amateur wrestling, this is the way this is what it teaches you. It teaches you, it puts you in uncomfortable positions, and you have to learn how to get out of those uncomfortable positions. Once you learn that, you can apply that to life, and you can apply that to death, taxes, divorce, whatever, so it teaches you're the one that has to get out of it. You're the one that has to get out of those, when you start wrestling is when you're put in that uncomfortable position, so it's a great sport. I call it the Marines of all college athletics, really. I mean, what other sport, what sport is crazy enough to where you cut weight to lose weight, you put your body through these crazy workouts just to lose weight so you can win a championship. Most people are lifting and trying to bulk up to win, titles, and here you are, you're depleting your body of all its nutrients and protein just so you can win a national title, or All-American. But no, I got into amateur wrestling, to answer your question, because I was hooked on pro wrestling, and we moved to Oklahoma, and I saw that there was wrestling. We moved there when I was going into 7th grade. I saw junior high sports, I was looking through the athletic, but it said wrestling. So I was like, oh, this is great, man. It's going to be pro wrestling. I had no idea about amateur wrestling. I go in to sign up, and there's mats. And I'm like, where's the ring? It's not like that. So that's how I got into it. And I'll tell you what, the first 2 years was hell. I even quit my 8th grade year, but then I went out for basketball. And since I can't jump or shoot, I had to go back to wrestling. I got cut right off the bat from there. So, So, I mean, it's a sport where you get, man, the best way you can learn is just get take a lot of butt kickings. That's what I did.
So now you get into professional wrestling, right? After your amateur stuff, you and your brother get into it. You go to WWE. You're on the main roster. What is that like as far as your life-changing moment? Right now you're a star on TV.
Yeah, it was surreal. It was crazy. Like, it was a dream for me and my brother. My brother, we were never able to be the Haas brothers on TV. We were never able to showcase what we could do because we were a hell of a tag team. The stuff we were doing, we were, like you said, we spent 5 years on the indies. So we were doing a lot of stuff, where Russ was a hell of a gymnast and wrestler, and I was more of the better ground and pound, so so he would take to the air and I would take to the ground. And I mean, he was as big as I was, 6'2", 230 at the time. And, so we were we were a hell of a tag team. But when, he passed away, I thank God for Shelton. I thank God, Russ was his guardian angel, my guardian angel, and sent Shelton to me because, he could have just like, no, I don't want to do it. But he had the same work ethic as I did. He wanted to be successful. I was going over through the timeline the other day with a friend, and my buddy Kurt Zamora, we were going through the timeline. We're like, man, Arn really worked with you guys for about a good year, before you guys made that debut, and which was great because here I'm sitting there going, this is one of the guys I looked up to, my mentor. I loved the Four Horsemen. I loved Arn and Tully. I loved Arn and Ole. And I'm sitting there going, man, this is going to be unbelievable. And he trained and worked with us. And he was like, will you guys let me put my stamp of approval on you? And we're like, definitely, So I can't thank Arn Anderson or Jerry Briscoe enough for, here you have the Briscoe brothers and the Four Horsemen, two of the greatest working with us. And they really, man, they made us the tag team we were. So it was surreal that we were on TV, but it was even more surreal that not only do we get to TV, but they threw us right into the fire. I mean, we're in there, we're main eventing against, Benoit, Guerrero's, Brock, we're wrestling at Madison Square Garden, we're wrestling Hogan, we're wrestling, I mean, you name it, it was just crazy. Big Show. I mean, it was just, it was surreal, but, it was either sink or swim. So we were determined to swim.
What do you think it was about that generation that came up? I mean, obviously 2002, I mean, even now, these guys are still top guys that came up in that OVW 2002, 2001 to 2002, that class of wrestlers that came up together. You brought up Danielson. On the WWE side, you got Cena, you got, everybody
Orton.
Talks about Orton, that graduating class of OVW. Why do you think between 2000 and 2002 we got to see such, tremendous, not only in-ring ability, but star power also? What was it about that generation of wrestlers that came up?
I think a lot of it, you have to go through that OVW. I think you have to thank Jim Cornette, really. People, dude, he's a master, man. And you have to thank Danny Davis. I mean, Danny Davis, a lot of those guys did not know anything about pro wrestling until they got to OVW. A lot of people didn't know about wrestling, and then they got there and they had to learn break the bad habits, learn all, the good habits. You got to really thank, people like, like I said, Danny Davis, Jim Cornette, Rip Rogers. I mean, people don't give him enough credit. I mean, he was down there and he taught me how to punch. He taught me, how to make it look real, how to work smarter, not harder, it's just, I don't know. It was such you had Batista, you had Cena, you had Orton, Shelton, Brock, myself, Doug Basham, Nick Densmore, Rob Conway, Lance K came up through there, the Island Boys. I mean, it's just
memorable talent, right?
Yeah.
Memorable, everybody that you listed.
And it was just, I don't know if it was just so much that we grew up, maybe you can say we all grew up because when we got there, we all talked about the territories that we watched. We all watched World Class. We all watched, the Carolinas. We watched Georgia Championship Wrestling. We watched Mid-South. Here we are. We watched all these different, territories at the time, and everyone did. So we all, I guess, we're all fans to begin with. So we were just happy to be there. So you're right. The talent is exceptional. They're still going strong. look at like Edge and Christian and Lance Storm and Chris Jericho and Rhino. Now that whole territory from up in that, from anywhere from Detroit all the way up to Canada, we never got a chance to watch the Calgary Stampede, but that's what they grew up on, and they're still going strong off that. Those guys are exceptional. Edge is unbelievable. Christian, Jericho. So and Rhino's still going at it. Scott D'Amore is one of the he runs Impact. He's one of their top talents at the time. So I think it's because we all grew up as fans and we're able to watch different territories and as a fan, you have this Rolodex in the back of your brain and you're picking up moves and talents and what you thought and then different people's, their beatitudes or, and what they could do in the ring. I think Randy Orton, we all were there when it clicked for him. He grew up watching his grandfather and dad. And it was just, I think he's the best in the ring as of today when it comes to everything.
So rising through the ranks of WWE, when you're getting there, you're having this camaraderie with everybody. It sounds like all you guys are on the same page. Did you want to always be a tag team guy? Did you want to be known as a tag team wrestler? And if so, what does it for you about tag team wrestling?
Yeah, I did want to always, because me and my brother, we always wanted to. We were big fans of the Steiner brothers, amateurs. And it's like, man, we thought we could do, we watched a lot of their stuff from Japan and WCW. We were trying to do a lot of stuff that they were doing. And then, but man, here's what I loved about tag team wrestling is like, so I'm coming up on the indies and ECW has, look at the tag teams they had. They had the Dudleys. They had the Gangsters. They had the Public Enemy. Then they had Cronus and the
Eliminators.
Cronus and Saturn, the Eliminators. And then you had the FBI. So those tag teams are unbelievable. The tag team titles meant something, Then you go over to WWE, you have New Age Outlaws, you got the Hardy Boys, you got Edge and Christian, you got, then the Dudleys came over. But the tag team titles meant something there, Then you go down over to WCW. And you're growing up, you're watching the Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, the Four Horsemen, you got, who else? The Fantastics, man, the other guys, not the All Night. I'm trying to think. You have Steve Kern and Stan Lane, the fabulous ones. You grew up in the Von Erichs, in the Freebirds. You grew up. I grew up watching all these tag teams, and dude, a lot of tag teams were main eventing the pay-per-views at the time when they started pay-per-views. The first WrestleMania was headlined by a tag team. It was Hogan and Mr. T versus Piper and wonderful. So it was just, tag team wrestling was something I loved. I loved that I grew up watching, the blind tags, the refs, not burying the refs where they're, the refs, the heels were heels and they did their job, and they made the baby faces and they made sure the fans didn't get what they wanted. And, it was a great time. I thought tag team wrestling is a lost art today. It really is. But I always wanted to be a tag team guy.
I agree with you. What do you and you kind of hit something on the head here. You said, tag team wrestling is in lost art. What do you think is missing from the current wrestling? Obviously, there's a lot of great stuff happening, but what do you think is the key thing that's missing?
The heels aren't heels. And what I mean by that is that, okay, so let me ask you guys a question. Who would you say is the greatest tag team you guys have seen? Who's your greatest tag team?
Rich, you want to go first?
I'll tell you my favorite tag team. My favorite tag team of all time is the Dudley Boys. I just think because they could do everything. They came from, they're New York guys. I'm a New York guy. So there was that kind of thing intrinsic in there. And they just looked so badass,
Right. Okay.
For me, it was the Road Warriors. That was my favorite tag team of all time. As a kid,
Yeah, for me, it was Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard.
Fantastic. Top 5 of all time.
Right. Can you guys name one double tag team move they ever did?
Oh, did they? Did they do a double tag team move? No,
because they worked the crowd, they worked the body parts, they worked the psychology, and that is what's missing. The heels today, all they want to do is out wrestle the babyface. They want to have better double team moves than the babyfaces. They want to look prettier. They want, dude. It's not, man. It's about not giving the fans what they want. You capitalize on your opponent's weakness. And I mean, Arn, it's an old Anderson cliche. And I always say this. I go, well, you find that weakness, you render it, or you hinder that limb useless. You beat them with it. You make them submit. And then he goes, would you go into Walmart and buy a three-legged table? Hell no. So I mean, and that's what's missing. That's what's missing in tag team wrestling. The heels don't know how to cut off the ring. They don't know how to. I see a match where the ref gets buried all the time. They don't. It takes 5 people to work a tag match. You got to have a hell of a babyface team that also has to learn that, hey, look, it's not about me getting my shit in. It's not about me saying, hey, I got to get all this in. You guys are making me look weak. I'm looking like a wimp here, man. I got to get stuff in. No, man, sell. All you got to do is just sell, and we will pop like popcorn. When the time's right, the hot tag, they're going to blow it, baby, and we're going to pop like popcorn.
Do you think the cool heel kind of hurt the fact that people don't want to boo heels anymore? They're looking for, like Roman Reigns, great example, right? He's a heel, but he's a cool heel. People love to cheer and want to see him be a heel. Do you think that the whole concept of a cool heel kind of hurt how a traditional heel operates?
Well, I think it does. But I also think, like, I've been working with Kevin Sullivan a lot lately. And like, I'm having a good heel run down here with SWE, and it's like, and the crowd's starting to change, and and he's like, hey, they're starting to change for you. So you got to be able to, I think you got to surround your side. Here's the deal. Here's my deal. You got pro wrestling, you got sports entertainment. Sports entertainment, I think it's great. I think that is produced by a lot of people that are like that really weren't fans, that have more of a sci-fi intellect, that have done a lot of stuff in Hollywood, and they get brought on to WWE to write storylines. That's sports entertainment. I think professional wrestling is what you see with Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, or Kevin Sullivan behind the scenes that have been there, that know how to draw money, that know what does it take to make a heel and face. I think that's pro wrestling. I think that's the ones that are educating. That's the difference. That what I think it's sports entertainment and pro wrestling. I think that when you feel the fans changing you got to turn. You always got to be at one step ahead of them. What can you do that's different? That's going to make you. That's going to make people go, like gasp and go like, oh my God, I can't believe you just did that. You're always going to have that 18 to 35-year-old, the guys drinking and that want to have the catchphrases and sing, and sing along with it. But, you like you said, the heels, like Arn always says, he's like, just don't give them what they want. They want that. Just don't give it to them. But you're right. It's for so long, they were trying to make, Roman Reigns a face, and the crowd didn't like it. They hated it. As soon as they turned him heel, now they love it. So, it's man, like I said, the fans are smart. They're really smart. I think you're gonna have some fans, that are gonna like some wrestlers that don't. They feel that this wrestler's over, then this wrestler isn't. This guy should be on top. Who shouldn't? It's just. I guess we're gonna learn as the fans grow. We grow as well. So
it's an ever-changing landscape, and being a fan and a wrestler like yourself, what was the most surreal moment for you as a professional? Whether it's a fan interaction, like you met so and so backstage, or what match that you were in, did it click for you where you were like, holy shit, like this is happening right now?
I think when I think my first match right away, I mean, they put us in there with Edge and Benoit, Sean and I, like whoa, and then they had me, I'm wrestling Edge, and then my first, in the singles, and they had me get a win on them. I'm like, whoa, it's really like, whoa, man. Then you're in there with the Guerreros. I mean, Eddie and Chavo. It's just man. It's just like you grew. It's like, they're not much older than me, but like I grew up watching them. When I was in high school, college, and I'm like, and then all of a sudden I'm wrestling them. I mean, I know what happened with the Benoit tragedy and all that, but I mean, he was one of the greatest in the ring. I mean, to be able to hang with him, to be able to learn from him, to be able to learn from Kurt Angle. I think what also when we were in Madison Square Garden, we wrestled, Hulk Hogan and Kurt and Brock, and it was Big Show Shelton and I. That was surreal. I'm like, I'm wrestling Hulk Hogan. Like I grew up watching him. When I wrestled Ric Flair, they grew up. I mean, it's just, and then just knowing that you have Arn Anderson in your corner as a coach or trainer, you're just like, oh my God, man. It's like everybody you watched growing up or now is working behind the scenes, working with a Pat Patterson, a Jack Lanza, a Tony Gurria, a Jerry Briscoe, and then working for Vince McMahon himself, meeting Vince. And he's like, hey, we're going to put the titles on you guys. We want Team Angle to run with all the titles for SmackDown. I mean, that was, having that meeting with him, that was surreal.
I mean, obviously, you go from, you see Vince on TV, and now you're sitting in an office discussing business with him. Has to be surreal. I mean, your career has been. I was Rich also. Obviously, big fans of Team Angle, big fans of your career, you and Shelton. Now you're back into professional wrestling. You have a match this Thursday on Impact, which there's a lot of hype for it. You and Josh Alexander. Where do you see going 2022 now? You put on some muscle now. You've been working out differently, like you said earlier in the show. What's your plan for this year?
Well, man, my plan is to get back out there. I would love, man. I would love to work for Impact. I'd love to work for AEW. I'd love to work, with whatever promotion, any promotion that would have me work with them, not only as a wrestler, as to help teach, the knowledge that was passed down to me from the people that I mentioned that I was able to work with, and then the knowledge they passed on to me that I have, that I can pass on. I could work with these people in the ring. I can teach them what I learned, how to slow down, how to tell a story, I would like to keep wrestling, at least for another year or two. And then, but also at the same time, work as a promoter or not a promoter, but to work as a coach or a producer, as what WWE calls it, to go into and working with talent relations, like, being in the ring, like Arn does and Fit Finley does before the shows, and working with these individuals and say, hey, okay, this is what I would do, for TV, or this is how I would slow down, or specifically work with tag teams, teach them what's missing. If I can get 4 or 5 tag teams in a promotion, they would bring me in just to be a mentor to the tag teams. I know we could turn it around. I mean, there's so much great talent out there. It's now just getting those heel tag teams to say, hey, look, you don't have to be pretty. It's a street fight, man. It's supposed to look ugly. It's not supposed to look like Circus Soleil. I think I have a lot like that to offer. So, I mean, that's my goal. I got 2 kids, 11 and 9-year-old that are great amateur wrestlers right now, and they're doing the pro wrestling as well.
I just saw that, by the way. Somebody sent me the video, and I wanted to ask you about that. Your kids are tremendous.
Dude, it's ridiculous. It's like Kevin Sullivan goes, hey, are these your boys in the ring? And I'm like, I thought I was like, oh man, what are they doing now? I'm like, I went out there. I'm like, yeah. I go, what? You want me to get them out of the ring? He's like, no, watch this. And we're watching. He goes, Charlie, did you teach them? I go, look, I teach them the psychology. We'll sit down and watch the moves. I mean, it's like me and my brother. We grew up as fans, and what I would do would practice on my mom and dad's king size bed. I don't know how many bed frames we ruined, but I mean, that's the truth. They have the chance to go to a pro wrestling ring and to do this stuff. So, I'm working with other people in the back, and they're doing this stuff, and I'm like, man, it's like their timing is ridiculous. They watch, they stalk, they love Randy Orton. So, and I tell them, I go, watch Randy. Randy's the best. The timing when he changes gears, and Brock Lesnar as well. And I said, so that's what they do. And like, I've put the video out, and they've had like 4 matches so far. Of course it's against each other. If I can find more kids that pro wrestle, I'd like to to keep that going. But yeah, I mean, they hang out. Rodney Mack teaches them, or if Shelton's around or whoever, Kevin Sullivan, they'll get in the ring and they'll work with them and show them different things. So, I mean, they for their age, they're really good. So I'm happy. So yeah. So to answer your question, I would like to, become a producer, become a coach, and because I have them coming up. I mean, look at Dave Finley's kids, Fit Finley's kids. They're unbelievable, and so is Haku's kids. So and of course Rikishi's, Jay and Jonathan. So it's just we'll see what happens, but I like to be around for them and to finish out a good legacy as a singles, and maybe to help direct them, and when I think they're ready to let them go to where they need to be, that'll help produce them to be the stars they could be.
So I got a kind of like a 2-part question for you, Charlie.
Yeah.
All right. So wrestling Josh Alexander, in your head, so the first part, are you kind of thinking like, all right, this is almost like I'm wrestling myself? And then apart from Josh Alexander, yeah, go ahead.
it was like wrestling like oh man, yeah, it was kind of like wrestling, like a mirror, but almost like a Kurt, you know. He and what I mean by Kurt Angle, not because they both have shaved heads or anything. It's because he has that engine that just goes. It was really good. And what was great about him is that he knows he's on top where he is, but he was very accepting for me to give input on what I thought we should do or how we could do this or what would work. And he was down for it. He was man, he was just like an ultimate pro. Wrestling him, I was like, he is the top, man. He's the pinnacle, and he is definitely Impact needs to really put that flag on him. They really do.
So besides Josh, who are another couple of talents that you would love to work with? Like you said, you want to finish out your legacy as a segment. Oh yeah,
Jacob Fatu, man, Samoan werewolf. He is okay. Awesome. So I don't think people know much about so you have the brothers Rikishi, Umaga, and Tonga Kid, right? There's 4 brothers, but those 3 are the ones that wrestle. And Umaga was one of my best friends. He passed on. And I'm good friends with Rikishi, his sons, Jonathan Jay, the Usos, and then the Tonga Kid, his son is man Jacob Fatu, and the Samoan Werewolf. And when I first saw him wrestle, I started crying, man, because all the stuff he does is what Umaga did, man. And it's like, and that pop up Samoan and that ATM, the ass to mouth, that running into the corner. I was the guinea pig for all that for Umaga, man. Down in I was. It was right after Russ died, and they were down the Island Boys, and man, he's like, we go to the ring early. He said, I want to try this, man. So I'm on the one that was like, all right, tuck your head way up underneath that turnbuckle when his butt hits that, comes running in, or that pop up Samoan. I mean, you hug as tight as you can when he pops you up, man. So when you hit as one person, so it doesn't hurt. So like when I saw him hitting all this, I was like, yeah, he's another Umaga, man. I mean, it's like he's not as big, but he's more explosive. And I mean, Eki was Eki. Eki was explosive, and I'm not saying, but I mean, what he does is just, man. People don't give the Tonga Kid enough credit, man. I mean, he was probably one of the best ever, and maybe the best out of the 3 brothers, out of Umaga and Rikishi. I'm sure Junior would hate me to say it, but I really think he was really that great, and I could see traits of all 3 of those in the Samoan Werewolf. I think Jacob Fatu is great. I think another kid, Moonshine Mantell, he's up and coming. I think he is someone that they need to look at. They really do. You could look at. Over at NWA, that's another organization that's on TV or internet TV that's really doing great. I think Jack Stain, he could be real explosive, if they put him in the right area. I like to see Chris Masters have another run. And then, what about Hammerstein? He's unbelievable. The guy that's over there. PCW Ultra has a lot of great guys wrestling there as well. And, but I love Malachi Black. I would love to work something with him, man. I just, I think what he does, those people I'm mentioning. Oh, and Jonah. Fuck God, man. I mean, their work is not see-through. Their work is not see-through, and it looks real. That's what I love about Josh. It's like his work's not see-through. It's not. You don't. If you can't punch, don't punch. But these guys have it all. Their kicks, their moves, their the holds, the counters. It looks real. It's not see-through, man. It's and they're snug. But they don't hurt you. But it's snug. So.
It's amazing how much has changed in pro wrestling, but a lot of it hasn't. But the talent is there's such top tier talent now in pro wrestling that you would have never been exposed to because internet TV wasn't a thing. You had local independent promotions, but that was it. Like in order to see some of these guys, you had to see him on one of the big players, and now everything is accessible. And the fact that you're following this is amazing, right? You're still a fan of pro wrestling.
Yeah. Well, and I got to give props to GCW. They have another cult following.
Oh, they're killing it right now. Yeah.
Yeah, they're killing it. And dude, and the thing is, they are, maybe they're like ECW was for me in the early 90s, Now, would you see me doing those type of matches? No. If they're, if the payoff, it was built up to it, it was done right. Yeah, probably, most likely. Russ and I did it when we first started with Jersey All Pro. But the GCW, is killing it. They're doing great. Prestige. I just I'm working a signed a six show deal with them, so I'm looking forward to working with them. I'm looking forward to working with all this talent that you hear of, that you see of, and like you said, man, with the internet TV, it's almost like watching the old territories. It's like, be able to watch a Mid-South Wrestling, able to watch a World-Class Championship Wrestling, be able to watch WWF at the time, Georgia Championship Wrestling, then 605 to 805, Gordon Soley, you're able to watch all these different styles. So it's I just hope Ring of Honor comes back. That's what I'm hoping for. So.
Yeah, me too. I think the more product we have on TV, the better it is for everybody, and more variety to choose from, and I tell people this all the time. If WWE's not your thing, AEW's not your thing, you're looking for more traditional stuff, it exists. You got New Japan, you got so much, you got Impact, you got so many things to pick from.
Yeah, New Japan USA, Tanahashi, they're over here now, doing a lot. Steve Kern told me, he goes, what you would do back in the 70s and 80s, you would jump from you'd be in a territory for a year, then you move on, or maybe you're there for 2 years, you move on to another territory. One time, there was like 37 territories, I think, at one time in the United States, and you would work, you would go from territory to territory. I think Texas at the time had 7 at the most.
Wow.
And which is like you'd go up and you work, you work for the Romeros, which was the Youngbloods. Then you would come to, you'd work for the Tully Blanchards, the Blanchards down in San Antonio. And then you had the Guerreros down in El Paso. And then you had, the Von Erichs up here in Dallas. And then you had Paul Bosch down in Houston, And that's just, those are the ones that I know of off the top of my head. But then you had territories like, Pensacola, like, Global Championship Wrestling or Continental Championship Wrestling, and then you had USWA, but then you had the Paphos had their own territory. You go up to St. Louis, you had, you're up there with where Harley Race was. So you would jump around and and you'd be 10 years as a veteran, a pro, learning all these different styles of wrestling from, of course, probably one of the greatest territories that we'd never be able to see the library from if they can ever find it is Portland Championship Wrestling. A lot of greats came from there, like Roddy Piper from Dynamite Kid. Playboy Buddy Rose, probably one of the greatest heels of all times. It was from there. That's where Raven started. Shawn Michaels would go up there. So you would bounce around for 10 years, and then you get the call from NWA or WWF or AWA and say, hey, want to bring you in. And, because back then they would put the titles on men that they thought would go into a bar and kick ass. Like that's the way it was. Like, you would have these legit badasses that were your world champions that looked like a grizzled vet that spent 10 years like in the different territories.
It's amazing. It's amazing how everything has changed, but nothing has changed at all. Charlie, listen,
right.
Man.
What's old is new.
Yeah, what's old is new. I'd love to have you back on anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yes,
I'd love to have you back on. This was an absolute pleasure for me. Obviously, I could assume for Rich, too. I'm going to speak for you, Rich. This was cool.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm sorry if I'm long-winded. I know my answer.
Not at all, man. I love it. So, no. It was fantastic. Charlie, what do you want to plug? Where can people find you right now?
Yeah, you can. Okay, so I have my own podcast, and what's the difference about mine? It's I do amateur and professional wrestling. Now that all the amateur wrestlers, a lot of them are getting signed now from NCAA,
Gable and.
Yeah, Gable Stevenson. You had they signed my one of the guys I helped train in high school. His name's AJ Ferrari, Mr. Fast Switch on. Check him out. He's at Oklahoma State. He may be the first 5-time national champion since they gave everybody.
Yeah, he's fantastic. By the way, he just had the tryout, right? He had a tryout and they signed him. Yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah. He's really good, and you guys have there's a lot of so I have the Haas pod, so that's what I do. My Haas pod is between amateur and pro wrestling. I do pro, I do amateur, the greats. Trying to bring both worlds together to collaborate, to introduce more of these amateur wrestlers to pro wrestling and vice versa. Also, I'm on. So I'm at the Haas Pod, Wrestling's Greatest Podcast. I'm also on Twitter at Charlie Haas. I'm also Real Charlie Haas on Instagram, Real Charlie Haas Facebook page, and again, Wrestling's Greatest Podcast Facebook page as well. So,
awesome. Thanks again, Charlie. Charlie Haas, everybody. Guys. We'll be back with another.
Buy my new shirt. Buy my new shirt on Pro Wrestling Tees. Buy my new shirt. Charlie Haas is not dead. It's on Pro Wrestling Tees.
There you go. ProWrestlingTees.com. Look up Charlie Haas. Get his T-shirt there. Listen, man, I want to see so much more from you this year. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing all your matches, and I'm looking forward to having you back on the show, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for your time and, like I said, your patience for my long-winded answers. Thank you.
Not long-winded at all.
That was great.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, everybody.